Hello, everyone. Welcome to Neon Genesis EvanGLORIO, our episode-to-episode discussion podcast, where we're watching the iconic 1995 sci-fi mecha series Neon Genesis Evangelion. If you couldn't figure that out from the title, we're gonna try and streamline things a bit, recalibrate after last time we had the big long 2-hour episode, which I think we should be good now. But yeah, let's jump into it. I'll just introduce everybody. I'm Gel, and I have my eternal co-hosts with me. We have Iro.
I'm still here.
Iro's still with us. And we have G.
You keep forgetting the pilgrimage to Mecca branding, and I'm going to keep hounding you until we make sure. Look. As pilgrimage to Mecca's legal advocate, I must insist in the contract here. It stipulates that while this podcast is nominally a member of the Glorio network, it is also it requires co-branding with the pilgrimage to Mecca brand.
Maybe what we need is like a ad read we'll make up like a fake ad read in the middle of the episode.
I don't think
funny you should mention robots.
Tokyo 3.
Yeah. Yes. So Pilgrimage to Mecca presents Neon Genesis.
There we go.
Thank you for joining us for our second episode.
Oh boy.
So we are going to talk about episodes 4, 5, and 6, which I guess if there was one overall defining characteristic, there's a lot of Rey. There's about Rey, and there's some cool stuff that happens in the back end as well.
Yeah.
But
it takes a bit to get there, but yes, some cool stuff happens in these 3 episodes. Eventually.
Yes. So let's dive right in, and we'll start with episode 4, which is entitled, the English title is Hedgehog's Dilemma, which is quoting Ritsuko from the previous episode, and the Japanese title is Rain After Running Away. And I guess kind of interesting thing with this episode, to go to the platinum notes on this one, this episode did not originally exist in the series composition. They went straight from episode 3 to 5. And I guess, according to the notes, there was a lot of staff saying that, we feel like there should be another episode that kind of establishes Shinji's relationship with the people around him at this point, after the events of episode 3. And, that's kind of what we do. Mm-hmm. We dive a bit more into Shinji's present state of mind. And I guess the other interesting fact from these notes was that this is the only episode that Hideaki Anno did not write or direct. Yeah, and
you're saying all the stuff that I've written in my notes.
Oh no!
These are all from. I'm just getting from the platinum notes. So interesting.
Only
because there is no robot fight and not a whole lot of plot to speak of in this particular episode.
I feel like this episode is like tonally what a lot of people think remember Eva as, even though it's like there's a fair amount of robots in this show, but reputationally, by the way some people talk about the show, you think it's only Shinji moping around and such.
Yeah, I was going to say that's an interesting note. The idea that this episode originally was not intended to exist, because I would not call this episode redundant, but because I think it does do some interesting and important stuff, especially with, like, as you guys said, characterizing Shinji's relationship not only with the people around him, but kind of even with Tokyo 3 itself. I feel like up until now, we really had not seen much of the world that Evangelion inhabits beyond, Nerve headquarters and Shinji's school. And that said, I think the reason why it maybe does have that feeling, though, is, and believe me, I'm not even saying this because, there's no robots, but, like, as you said, there's not even that much plot development. It's an episode with very little forward momentum, and I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a valid creative choice, but at the same time, like, I think this was the first episode I watched where I was like, "Oh, here we go! Like this is the
this is
this
the
is
Ava I've heard so much about.
right, this is the Ava that is the stereotype about this show." You know, like up and if we were to take up the summation of these 6 episodes again, I think to go back to the thesis I stated in episode 1, like Evangelion is a mecha anime, and I think that anybody trying to claim it's not, at least based on these first 6 episodes, is full of shit. Like, there's a lot of robots happening, but I think this is the first episode where I can definitely see where and how someone might, see this episode and try to claim, like, oh, like, this is everything. This is Ava
Right.
in a nutshell, right?
Right. And yeah, it's obviously that's not true because it's just a piece of the puzzle, really. But
Right.
I mean, it is a piece of the puzzle. Like what we learn about Shinji and in this and his kind of where he's at this point in the story, it does inform his actions that we see later on. Like we understand why he's doing the things that he does better after this. And I think, I agree. I wouldn't necessarily say, like, I could see how this was maybe not originally deemed a necessary episode because it's not like essential, but I think it does add an extra layer of depth, for lack of a better word, to everything else going on. And it's definitely a mood. I really like the directing and everything on it. I think they very effectively use the tools they have to communicate Shinji's situation.
I guess. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna kind of walk through what actually kind of does happen a bit in the episode, but we kick off with basically Shinji has run away after the last angel battle.
So much for all that talk about not running away,
Yes. And so we kind of have this montage of him kind of wandering around Tokyo 3, which kind of, G, to your point, this is where we kind of get to know we kind of see more of the city and the kind of world he's in, which doesn't really look all that different than he's on the train. He kind of rides the trains by himself for a long time. At some point he hits him.
I'd like to make a side note here of about his SDAT player. The songs he's listening to on the player are from a character image album from the East series of games, specifically East 2. Like one of the characters' image songs from East 2, who was voiced by Misato's voice actress.
That is
are the songs he is listening to.
Very interesting choice. I mean, yeah. I guess in a lot of ways, it makes a lot more sense now that in Gridman, that Rika is listening to the Inferno Cop theme song. Like it all comes full circle. Just
sure.
People in show listening to very weird deep cut tracks from
odd deep cut choices. Yeah.
Yes.
We had but yeah, I mean I do love, we talked about last episode, the use of the power of using silence as kind of negative space, and there's not really any dialogue to speak of in a lot of this episode, which we'll get to later, I suppose. Yeah. But like it kind of lets you really kind of soak in some like the visual storytelling stuff. Like at one point he wanders into like movie theater in the middle of the night or something, and like I thought it was interesting. You see the one shot of him, like his eyes are just like completely dead, and then they kind of like widen as he sees some couple making out in the front row or something. Makes you think. But yeah,
I guess, yeah, sure.
I just love that kind of like wordless type of storytelling and using kind of the visuals and directing and stuff like that to get the mood across, which there's a lot of that going on here. But
he also stopped some terraced hill place during this montage, which is like an actual like volcanic caldera in the region, and is a notable suicide location from what I've heard.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Right for the mood. Some of those shots were really beautiful though. Once he gets out into like the countryside and stuff like that. It's just I mean, like I would be hesitant to use the word beautiful for some of the shots in this episode or whatever, because it's kind of, I don't know,
somber.
Somber, yes, that's a good word.
I think that's it. I think that it's still valid to call something aesthetically pleasing, regardless of the tone of what's being presented.
Yeah. So yeah, Shinji can't wander around forever though, and we kind of cut into some of the conversation with Misato and Ritsuko as they're trying to figure out, is he going to come back? What's going on or whatever. I'm not sure if this was the first time they mentioned that all the kids that are pilots have to be like 14 years old, or that
like for some reason only children can pilot the Avas.
Right. Yeah, I do think this is the first time in show anyways they mentioned that.
Yeah. I think that was the first time they specifically mentioned that in this conversation, which is kind of creepy, as they're like explicitly identifying them as 14-year-olds while over a shot of like seeing Rei on the table in her underwear. But that's anime for you, I guess.
I mean, I was gonna say, let's be real. There's you can always make the claim, oh, was Anno trying to say something, or is anime just for creeps? At the end of the day, does it really matter?
Yeah.
But I think I think it's just that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, G.
I was just saying, I think that at its core, it's just like that this is just another aspect of Evangelion that is in many ways true to the core of what mecha anime is. Like Gundam didn't like come up with like a specific like in-lore reason for why Amuro Rei had to pilot the Gundam, but
don't other people get into the Gundam and just don't pilot it as well?
Right. I mean, the excuse they have is other people try to get in the Gundam and they fuck up every time. So, because Amuro's the only one who read the instruction booklet that came with the Gundam. So I'm not even joking. That is the in-lore reason for Amuro's familiarity with it. There is a manual. The original Gundam, no other Gundam did this, but the original Gundam...
I mean, G-Reco has manual.
Okay, fine. The original Gundam and the G-Self from G-Reco both came with manuals.
This manual says that assault can mean to beat up someone.
But I think... But the core of it is that, like... as much as I love to talk about how, I love, real robot mecha anime because blah, 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 because it's like kind of portrayed in more like a militaristic, venue. I think that at its core, mecha anime is about extraordinary figures, i.e. the mechs, and they must be piloted by extraordinary individuals. And there's always going to be some reason or another for why, this person has to be the one who pilots the robot. And I think what Eva does is just kind of turn that like that principle into like an explicit in-world restriction.
Right.
Although we are not given any explanation as to why it must be these kids.
Sure, they don't say like, why,
it's
but
interlock or whatever. They just it's just the way it is.
Yeah. Right. I mean, we've seen.
I think we don't need to know at least yet, or at least I can pretend I don't know the reason at least yet. But like. Right. Because of the way Evangelion frames itself, like, it is quite grounded in a lot of ways. Again, to mention stuff like picking up Unit 1's head with a crane, like, it's such a grounded setting that, like, I'm sure that if they could, they would put trained adults in those robots instead. If they're putting kids in there, it must be because, because of the way the story has framed itself. I can find myself already accepting that, oh, if they're putting kids in there, it must be because that is literally the only option they have.
Right. Yeah, so I guess part of that scene too, we get a flashback to the last conversation Misato and Shinji had that kind of set this off, I guess, where
right,
Misato's
she kind of goes off on him for disobeying orders.
Yeah, she goes off on him for disobeying because if we recall at the end of episode 3, when the cord got cut and he only had 5 minutes, she said retreat, and Shinji went for the kill instead. And kind of one of the conclusions she kind of comes to is like, if you don't want to pilot the robot and you still pilot the robot, you're going to get yourself killed. And I guess from Shinji's point of view,
yeah,
it kind of sets up the question of, well, why is he piloting the robot, or why should he pilot the robot, or what is his motivation? And that's kind of the question that he's confronted with at this stage.
Yeah.
But so yeah,
he basically says like, I'm doing it because you told me I'm the only person who can, so I'm gonna do it, I guess. Right. Like, it's kind of what he says.
Right. I mean, he does clearly have some kind of sense of obligation because of that, and I think he knows that it's the right, something he has to do and kind of the right thing to do. I mean, that's how they're able to like emotionally manipulate him with Ray, right? Like,
yeah,
but knowing that and actually being able to get up and do it, or especially in the face of such overwhelming, it's a very overwhelming task, right? Like, and I think that does tie in with them being just 14-year-old kids again, of the weight of the entire world is literally on their shoulders. So that's kind of the conflict we have going on here. But anyway, we cut back to Shinji, who has rode the trains as far as they'll take him, and he's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, where he happens to stumble upon our friend Kensuke, who's playing soldier out in the field.
Dude's just fucking camping in the woods for some reason.
So you're really into that military shit, man.
He's running military exercises. It's not just camping, right? It's
apparently whatever excuse he wants to give.
Yeah. So they get to bond a little bit. It's kind of a rare situation where it's somebody kind of being nice to Shinji, I suppose. And I found it interesting, from the outside, Kensuke's like basically thinks Shinji's life sounds so cool, right? Like, he gets to pilot a giant robot and he lives with this hot babe and all that.
Yeah.
I guess G's like, yeah, that's what the problem is, right?
Yeah.
But for Shinji, it's obviously not that simple. But
yes, of course.
So
I do have a note here. Kensuke says he doesn't have a mother. And when Toji was talking about his family a couple episodes ago, he didn't mention his mother either. He was just like, my sister, my dad, my uncle or whatever work at the lab.
A lot of dead moms.
Yeah.
A lot of dead moms, dead parents, children coming in and out. Something seems to be going on, I suppose. But yep. So they're hanging out. So Shinji hangs out with Kensuke until Nerve finally tracks him down, because obviously they're not going to just let him wander around forever. So
I mean,
if we've established he's the only one that can pilot, or at least him and Ray are the only ones that can pilot the Evangelions so far, then they can't keep letting him run around. So they bring him in, and they do mention somewhere in the conversation as they're shuffling around at Nerve, I forget exactly when they bring it up, but they said they do mention that they're still looking for the fourth child. And we know we have
right, and we know. I mean, yeah, we know that Shinji's the third.
Right,
and Rei is the first.
Yeah. So aside from knowing that there's another kid out there, it also just shows they do not have a deep bench. So that's why, it's important that they
try
to get Shinji.
Yeah, related to that, I am kind of surprised that ostensibly at the end of the episode they seemingly let him quit if he wanted to. I mean, they let him get on that train. Like I guess it's like, I mean, on some level, sure, gotta respect the rights of the individual, but I guess I assume the kind of organization Nerve seems to be. I am surprised they did not just fucking, slap an explosive collar around his neck and press him into service. I just feel like,
well,
like if you got a bench of two, like,
well, here's the thing:
Right.
we've seen you have to be able to synchronize with the Evangelion, and that requires a certain amount of, I guess, psychological stability.
Right. I guess I do get that. Like, to pilot the Ava, you gotta want it.
Right.
But like,
so yeah,
I am surprised that this kid who has seen Nerve, who has seen this fucking super secret fucking underground sinking city headquarters, they'd be like, "All right, we'll put you on a train. You can go back to your old life."
Or maybe it was just like a real galaxy brain move, and they figured let him get it out of his system, and he'll come back or whatever. Because of course,
I mean, it worked.
There's a good like shot here where after they drag him back, and he basically is like, doing his thing of, oh yeah, I'll he's basically, yeah, he's saying like, oh yeah, I'll pilot it, like, even if you keep telling me that he's basically trying to call their bluff, or that, like, if you don't want to pilot it, then don't pilot it. He's basically calling their bluff to get them to ask him to stay, and then Misato's just like, all right, then
yeah,
you can leave. And there's the shot of him like basically freaking out. Like,
yeah, it's the old gambit of, you're a parent and your kid says they want to run away. You fucking double down
right.
and dare them to do it, right? Just like,
there's the door. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Knowing full well they'll be back, within, or they won't go. Either they won't go, or they'll be back in, a few minutes or whatever. But
right.
Yeah. And so, of course, Shinji does not actually. He gets as far as the train station, but he runs into Kensuke and Toji, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we knew you'd be here because we've seen off dozens of classmates who left." And we see Misato, who,
I mean, yeah, they basically say like, don't worry about it. Like,
yeah,
it's okay that you don't want to get into
yeah, that was a surprisingly supportive moment.
They were really, because they were in the cockpit with him in the last battle. They say, we saw what you go through, we're and they're very supportive about it, which was kind of nice.
Wait, so Kensuke was sitting in the cockpit when he saw Shinji fight that angel, but he still wants to get in the robot? Or he still envies Shinji for being an Ava pilot? Man, that kid's got priorities. I can respect that hustle.
He really likes his robots, I guess. But
he really wants to live with Misato.
Yes.
Sure, that too. That's definitely a bonus as well. Well, no, actually, as we see in the next episode, actually living with Misato is very much not a bonus.
Yeah, I don't know if the benefit outweighs the cost on that one, but but speaking of Misato, we do see her as kind of our wrapping up of this kind of arc here. She tears into the station because Shinji didn't get to say goodbye to her, basically, before he got booted out of Nerve, and she goes to watch his train go by, and the train leaves, and of course Shinji's standing on the platform. And they stand there, and they made sure to point this out in the Platinum Notes. They stand there literally for 50 seconds, doing absolutely nothing, staring at each other.
Oh man, I fucking
unbroken shots in Evangelion.
Yeah,
there's gonna be a lot.
This was a very very funny bit for me. I definitely lost it halfway through. Just like, it's a great moment, but
if anything,
I kind of want to use this to tie this into an.
I was going to say, if anything, just the sheer audacity of it is entertaining. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and so the thing I was going to say is, like, and funnily enough, you know who I was thinking of when I was watching that scene? I was thinking of, like, Trigger and, like, some of the some of the comedy.
Oh, you thinking of Trigger? Whoa, hang on.
Well, specifically, like, the comical bits, like...
Is this the opposite of...
like, the Trigger... Like, you guys... Please tell me you guys know what I'm fucking talking about.
Yes,
right?
Of course I know what you're talking about.
All right, Jesus. I thought I was going to have to literally, like, pull up some examples. But yeah, like, just like...
The way they'll hold on a joke.
Yeah, like, except... Yeah, right. I guess the reason I found it so funny is because, like, Trigger basically uses the same trick, but they use it for comedy rather than, like, a drama. And I guess that had me thinking of, like... how we always talk about how, like, Trigger are kind of low-key the masters of timing. Like, specifically, when I talk in animation, I mean, yes, they're great animators and, blah, 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 but, like, what I specifically think they're really good at is timing. Like, not just comedy timing, but, like, action timing and dramatic timing. And watching Evangelion kind of has me realizing, like, oh, maybe the Gainax legacy, like maybe that intangible Gainax legacy in some part is actually also, like, that studio and the people who worked there, they're kind of, like, extremely, like, on point, like, sense of narrative timing, because there's a version of the scene that holds for, like, 10 seconds, and you're like, wow, that, you're like, oh, okay, I get what that was meant to do. Then there's a version of that scene that holds for, like, 20 to 30 seconds, and you're like, that's too long. And then there's a version we get that's, like, 50 seconds, and it's too long, but then it loops back into being, like, thematically appropriate and sensible again. Like, it's such an intangible quality, right? Like, how do you know how long to hold so that it's long enough that people understand, oh, this is going on too long, but also goes so long.
You need to make the watcher not just understand that's awkward, but to feel the awkwardness themselves.
Exactly. Like, it's
yeah,
I think that's a great way to put it. Like, the difference between knowing it's awkward and then feeling it's awkward. And I think that is the difference between, like, holding on that scene for, like, 20, 30 seconds and then holding on that scene for nearly a minute.
Yeah.
And I just kind of found that very interesting.
They'll do it again later.
I
don't remember what episode.
Yeah, I just found that interesting, though, that, Anno would kind of use that trick for drama and to evoke, a sense of feeling in the scene, and fucking, Trigger being, the fucking anime Gainax shit posters they are, would go on to, of anything they seem to have inherited from Anno, it would be using that timing, but for stupid jokes.
Oh, someone got stabbed. Now blood's gonna spray for 20 seconds.
Yeah. So it definitely feels... Go ahead, Ira. I'm sorry.
There's a line Misato says earlier as well, where she says about Shinji that he can't let people know how he feels in any other way than this,
right?
Which I thought was a good line about this whole thing.
Yeah, it's a good summation of his character, for better or worse.
Right. And that was the goal of this episode. So mission accomplished. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like, I may not really like Shinji that much as a character, but I very much understand, like, what they are going with his character, and that I can respect. Even if it's maybe not exactly to my preference.
Right. Okay, so with Shinji back in the fold, we move on to episode 5, which is Ray 1. part, as in the number 1, the Japanese title being Rei Beyond the Heart. And we kick things off with a flashback to Rei testing Unit Zero, the other Evangelion that we've seen. And
like a couple episodes ago, we saw the aftermath of this. Like we saw the busted room, and Unit Zero like standing in there.
Yes, so
it's fist in the wall. You know, like...
So this goes back to 22 days earlier when the event actually happened, and clearly this test did not go well. Rei is unable to sync with Unit Zero. The thing starts going berserk. They have to pull all kinds of emergency plugs out of the wall, and we got some great shots of the Unit Zero punching the seemingly unbreakable glass while Gendo stands there without flinching.
Something I always kind of weirdly enjoyed about the show, watching it like in the past, was Gendo's like a dick, but he's unflappable. Like, I'm just gonna stand there from this window as this thing punches it, shatters the glass. I'm just gonna stand here.
Okay, that's cool if you don't like flinch or something, but I would think you would at least like take a step backwards, kind of back up a little bit, something.
Yes, and I respect that hustle, man.
You know, it's like when fucking Piccolo throws a fireball, but Raditz just stands there, no cells.
Yeah, no. Oh, good, Hero. You finally understand the appeal of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing I actually, you talk about the great shots, like, Unit Zero punching the wall, and this is where I get to talk about my brand of bullshit, of the dumb details I loved about this, is like when they unplug the umbilical, whatever it's called, right?
Yeah.
And like it falls to the ground, and then you see these little fucking jets like shoot a little bit right before it hits the ground, to like kind of cushion the fall so that it doesn't like get too damaged, and like like chef's kiss. That's the kind of mechanical detail I love. You know that like some fucking god tier like fucking artist designer was like, or was probably maybe an artist, maybe an animator, was like, oh shit, you know what actually be really fucking cool? Like, just like this extremely minute mechanical detail that like nobody else cares about, right? Like you could have done that scene the exact same way, just fucking cable falls to the ground, smash, makes a big noise. But now this person was like, nah, they're smarter than that. They wouldn't do it like that. Like they'd have a fucking contingency
rocket boosters on this thing.
Build rocket boosters onto this fucking electric cord, and it's like, but again, as goofy as that is, I kind of love that because it kind of builds to this idea of just like how, again, I don't know if grounded is the right word, but like believable, like Evangelion is in its mechanics. Like, yes, it's a giant purple green robot wearing fucking sneakers, but like, it's like. But also, like, all the, like, really, like, lovely mechanical shit, like, the elevators that come out of every mountain, or, like, the rifles hidden in, weapon racks disguised as buildings. It just builds to this...
that's pretty cool. But,
too bad we didn't put those jets on the entry plug.
Yeah, well... So... Gendo may not...
I mean, we have ejection jets, but not...
Yeah, Gendo may not be fazed by giant robots punching him in the face, but this is the first time we do get some emotion out of him when the entry plug of the Unit Zero is forcibly ejected and bounces around the enclosed room.
Pretty gnarly.
I kind of love. And I love this because, again, that's like a little thing that's like
you don't have to see Rei getting knocked around,
right?
Because
you just see this fucking plug just like literally ping ponging off of walls in this, like you just know that this ejection like system was never built to be used indoors. Like this was supposed to be like eject the pilot like miles away from the battle, not fucking
into the wall,
into the wall.
So
some real fucking Top Gun shit.
Yeah. So this is kind of the first time we see Gendo lose his cool because Rei's in danger, and once the plug hits the ground,
doesn't give a fuck about his actual child.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly the point that they're going to hammer home here in the next 2 episodes. But
Yeah, I mean, it's a little on the nose, but I do think it's an effective like narrative choice to like constantly contrast between, Gendo's treatment of Rei versus Shinji.
Right.
Yeah.
And as we see, we kind of see the reason why he has the gloves. Right. He runs out and forcibly rips manually opens the door to the entry plug with his bare hands, even though it's burning his fingers to get Rei out of the plug.
We also, I never realized this until watching this episode, like a couple days ago. But like, he's got his regular glasses here that he loses and they melt and everything, and Rei takes them, and so he's got his sunglasses all the time.
So both
those tinted ones,
So both the gloves and the sunglasses come from this.
Yeah, I never realized that detail.
This incident. That's a fun detail.
He between the gloves and the glasses, he's now +2 on evil. His evil stat. Right. So, we get kind of that interesting tidbit of background information, and then we skip ahead back to our present time, where I loved this part with the Misato and Ritsuko are at basically a autopsy for the last angel that they fought, and we see like the giant silly chalk outline of where the body was.
Oh man, I love this shit.
Right.
And they've set up
where they landed, and
they've set up a camp on like the angel's body as they're doing the autopsy. Like the outline thing kind of reminded me of the kind of stupidity, and we'll get into this comparison in the next episode too. I thought of in Gunbuster when they had like the gunpla runners for the giant ships.
Directed by Ayano, so
yes, same directors, same writers.
I can very much appreciate these kind of dumb little details, because it kind of like it's the angel itself is such an otherworldly creature, but like to bring up something like Pat Labor again, like there's something very delightful about like treating these inherently extraordinary like phenomena with a kind of supremely dumb amount of mundanity. Like who the fuck is this chalk outline for? Like,
yeah,
like what is it actually doing? Who does it serve?
What purpose is that serving at all? Right. So, So they're still trying to figure out exactly what the angel is. We do get kind of the tidbit that angels have 99.989% match to human genetics. Which we give no other context for that other than that is mentioned. But
like monkeys,
blood pattern blue explains everything.
Yeah, that it all makes sense now. But so meanwhile, while the adults are doing that, so we kind of cut back to school. We haven't been to school for a bit, so we're at PE class, and the boys are ogling the girls at the pool, and everybody's giving Shinji a hard time about, you probably like Rei or whatever, like as dumb 14-year-old boys are wanting to.
As
do.
boys
you're both pilots, so you must be hanging out.
Yeah.
And man, these boys got the fucking shortest fucking shorts I have ever seen.
1990s, baby.
No, this was 2000.
Those shorts
2015, right? But
man, those shorts are almost bloomers. Like Jesus,
yeah.
Gonna run.
I feel like this might be a good time to mention this bit of an anecdote of the first time I ever heard of Neon Genesis Evangelion. Seeing it was back in.
Okay. Oh dear. Oh boy. Oh boy.
I can't wait for this.
Back in the day, it was probably like I want to say it would have to be 1997.
Damn,
either 1977 or maybe 98. But
that's like
I was running. I was drawing anime fan art, and I had a fan art website for anime.
Oh hell yeah!
And
all right,
I was bouncing around I was on a web ring, and I was bouncing around. If you kids remember what web rings are, I was bouncing around other sites on the web ring, and one of them was like, the hottest girls in anime.
Oh hell
and,
yeah!
I was I was, just checking out, wondering what people's opinions were.
Oh, sure, of course. You were just doing some research.
Number one, this person had Rei Ayanami from Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Of course,
and I'm like, I've never heard of that show. But I mean, for me personally, Rei never did it for me. But
who else did they have?
I do remember that was the first. I don't remember the rest of the list, to be honest.
97,
but that would
probably be like
Tenchi Muyo or something.
Yeah, you'd have like Ryoko or whatever her name was from Tenchi Muyo.
Yeah, Ryoko, Tenchi Muyo, something like that. Yeah. But I specifically remember though the image he picked was of Rei getting out of the pool, which is why I thought about this, because the pool in this episode.
Just doing some research,
that was the first time. Yeah. Well, I wanted to see who else was on the web.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So
whatever you feel like you gotta say.
And of course I would go on to keep seeing the name popping up later of everyone freaking out over and saying this is the greatest anime of all time and whatnot. But I didn't actually get the opportunity to watch it, because obviously in those days you couldn't just like torrent stuff or whatever. But even if you could, it would have taken you like 6 years to download it.
Head on down to Miami Mike's anime shop and grab the VHS.
Yeah.
Gotta circulate.
Actually, I don't even remember how I. Yeah, I think did I watch it? I might have watched it because I think I rented it the first time I saw it. I honestly don't even remember.
Man, that's some old school shit right there.
So there you go, folks. There's my old man anime story for the day.
But hey, just my proof that fucking even as far back as 97, 2 years after Eva aired, like Rei's character was already a signal of the beginning of the end times. So,
I think it might have been worse back then, to be honest, because the amount of because this was still in the days of everyone thinking that Evangelion had all the religious symbolism and all that stuff actually meant something. I feel like that's died down a lot now. But you had like the long think pieces and conspiracy theories and
right. I guess I was more commenting on like Rei as a character specifically, and
Rei specifically, yes,
the merchandising of that
waifu
character, right, and what she has become, despite whatever intentions Anno might have had, with that character. Just I mean, we'll get into this when the other equally waifued and merchandise characters showed up, but her, I'll say I get it. That makes sense, right? Like, of course, that character is built to sell pillows and shit, but the merchandising of Rei is an interesting and kind of twisted phenomenon in some ways.
She is the weird, strange, and mysterious, character.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a way to put it.
Anyway, so we kind of get the little bit of teasing with Shinji there while they're in school, and then we kind of bounce over. He's at work now, and they're doing their practice
synchro tests or whatever, right?
Yeah, and he's zooming in, and it's the first time we see Rei show any emotion. We don't hear what she's saying, but he kind of zooms in on her talking with Gendo, and she actually looks happy and animated.
They're having a nice, pleasant conversation. Right?
Yes.
Probably. Talking about what is a pleasant conversation between Rei and Gendo? What does that sound?
I'm glad your injuries are better. I don't know.
I'm glad you're alive.
Please get back into the robot.
Yeah. My son sure is a putz, isn't he?
Kind of like an indirect slap in the face to Shinji there, right?
Yeah, totally.
As he's watching their conversation, but
intentional or not, I feel like it's a very direct slap to the face.
Yeah, I mean, what's the last thing Gendo told him? I called you here because I have need of you. I don't think they've spoken since that conversation at this show.
Yeah,
directly.
We kind of get a couple. I haven't brought up all of them. We kind of get a couple bits reinforcing that throughout this episode of just yep, Gendo sure likes Rei a lot more than his own son. Yep. But anyway, And we did get some more comedy bits with Masato. Ritsuko comes over for dinner.
Fucking
I would just
Misato's
like to
fucking
make a
nightmare
statement.
life.
Right. Instead of just buying curry flavor instant ramen, she buys pork instant ramen and then ready to eat curry and just combines them.
Here's the thing.
Oh, it sounds.
You just get so much more curry flavor that way.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm not gonna even fucking like hate on like curry ramen. I think curry ramen is actually fucking fantastic, but the way Misato lives her life is deeply concerning. Like, what kind of fucking monster is just like, this will go great with my instant ramen? And
it's like instead of buying barbecue flavor potato chips, you buy potato chips and barbecue sauce.
Right, like that's
God.
Yeah.
Like pour the barbecue sauce in the bag and shake it up, right?
Yeah. You get so much more barbecue flavor that way.
I think the thing that actually made me completely fucking lose it though is the scene with Pen looking at his food bowl, and there's the fucking unopened can of beer sitting next to it, and it's just like, fucking, is this a normal thing for Misato? Is this just like a curry and a beer for you? Like,
they just literally give Pen a bowl of curry with like no like. And then the unopened,
like
Misato's only concept of nourishment.
You didn't even fucking open the poor can. Like, how's this bird supposed to get at that?
I do like this. This is like the most casual we've seen like Ritsuko though, who up till now has been the like serious scientist lady, you know, saying that there's a 0.000 whatever % chance, etc.
Right.
But
I mean,
she's just over for dinner, you know, like
totally. I'll say this conversation, I think, for our episode 6 discussion, mainly to do with Misato, because of like kind of the contrast between the Misato you see here in episode 5 and then the Misato who is handling stuff in episode 6. And I can appreciate, like, you know, this idea that like all of these characters are very multifaceted, you know, like it would be very easy to like make these character traits seem incongruous or even like contradictory to each other, but like I do kind of like this characterization of Misato as like when she's on the job, like fucking, you know, there's nobody better, but when she's not on the job, she turns into, I mean, this scene is basically the equivalent of like me when I get home from work and I take off my collared shirt and I immediately remove my pants for the rest of the day. You know, like
yes, and we will see that contrast in episode 6 for sure. So we can kind of get into that, once we get there. But one final good quote from Misato here. She mentions both Rei and Gendo are not very adept at living.
Ritsuko says it.
Ritsuko says that, yes, sorry. As they're kind of talking there, which is part of the, you know, if these 2 episodes, 5 and 6, are supposed to introduce us to Rei, that's kind of the big takeaway, one of the big takeaways we're trying to get here. But speaking of Rei, they ask Shinji to do a bit of an errand to get Rei her new ID card. So he, of course, has to go over to her apartment,
which is yeah.
It's like in like this condemned part of town, and somehow more disgusting than Misato's apartment.
Right.
All I could think of when I saw this scene was like, oh, Rei lives in the apartment from The Raid, like the movie The Raid.
And yeah, it's like I said a few episodes ago, like how it's obvious that Misato's apartment is the only occupied one in that whole complex. But Rei seems like she's the only person living for like 3 miles. You know,
yeah, it's an interesting it's an interesting narrative choice that these people like live so isolated from each other despite the complete like lack of need to do that.
I mean, thematically appropriate.
Yes, of course. That's why I brought it up. But you know, just like it's
right.
Yeah, Rei's apartment is fucking shit. It's
I mean, she literally has bloody bandages laying around like on her bed and stuff like that. Like, it's disgusting. It's like a hazard.
Like, there's a part of me that's like,
But,
I don't understand how people were able to waifu Rei so hard as they did back then, because you get one look at her apartment and like, no, dog, no.
Right, like Misato's apartment was like messy as fuck, but it was lived in. You know, like a human being did this.
Yes.
Like Ray's apartment is like an abandoned building, right? Like.
Yeah.
It's not the shit that piles up because people are there. It's the shit that piles up because nobody's there ever.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, obviously that's an interesting choice because, like, regardless of, like, how much you might know about Ray's character at this point or not, right? It's like her living situation already begins to speak volumes about her, right? Like what kind of life does she lead? Like what priorities or maybe complete lack thereof does she have, in the way she lives her life outside of Nerve, if this is like, what she considers acceptable living, like all I could think of, like, we'll get into this next, like when she, gets out of the shower naked, right? Like all I could think of, like, me being me was like, oh God, like if this is what the apartment looks like, just imagine how disgusting that bathroom probably looks.
Right. Yeah. And she doesn't even take her shoes off.
Yeah, you see the footprints right on the fucking floor.
Like, yeah, fuck. Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, in true, I guess harem protagonist fashion, Shinji lets himself in the door when nobody answers at the apartment, and he kind of looks around for a bit, pokes around on her desk, which. Interestingly enough, I don't know why the Platinum Notes decided to tell us this, but the books on her desk are about medicine and psychology, apparently, and they're all tabbed up, so she's really into that. So I guess if she's into anything, that's what she's into.
Yeah, sure.
And, this is where, Shinji sees his... I'm not sure if he's clear. He doesn't know that it's his dad's glasses, right? Like, at this point.
I mean, I think he could make an inference, because they did tell him about the incident, like...
Okay, yeah.
I suppose, though, at the same time...
He finds the glasses that Ray picked up after, Gendo rushed in to save... Gendo rushed in to save Ray, and he dropped his glasses, and she kept them, and so she has them on her desk. And, of course, that's when she walks out of the bathroom naked, because that's just how anime works. And,
right.
And, of course, in this situation, the only logical conclusion is for... both of them to end up on the floor with Shinji on top of her.
With his hand on her boob.
Gasp.
Yes.
I feel like this scene only works if you've seen enough anime to see how this often goes in the harem-type comedies, right?
Yes. I mean, I think, obviously, the scene is intentionally meant to, like, make you, feel like just how awkward this situation would actually be in real life, like...
Right, and, like, also, like, Ray has no social norms whatsoever.
Right,
yes. That is the real point, of course, I'm sure, is showing that, Ray really doesn't care about much other than piloting the Evangelion and making Gendo happy,
and
apparently.
Gendo, yeah.
So, stuff like, having a boy your age see you naked, or cleaning your apartment, or not leaving bloody bandages around are not important, because that has nothing to do with piloting the Evangelion or keeping Gendo happy. So I'm sure that's the point, and not just for the sake of having naked anime girls on the screen.
Right, but I mean, I don't want to get too deep into this. Maybe this is something I would say for after having watched the show in its full. It's kind of like better understand, but like, also, let's be real, that scene is still here, and like, I think a lot of people chose to take that scene a completely different way. Let's be honest, like, to kind of get into the the merchandising of Ray again. Like,
oh yeah, I was being like 85% sarcastic there. Yeah, there's definitely
I guess what it is I think obviously obviously we can watch that and we're like, oh yeah, like of course, like that scene's meant to like contrast with like conventions, conventions of the time, and like show like how different of a person she is. But also I wonder how many people like probably just like fucking I don't know
so let me just grab her.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, perfect. Thank you, Eero. That was the exact like voice and cadence I needed for that.
That's the whole. I mean, that's the whole. That's why girls like Rey are like always popular waifu material, because it's the emotionless, I don't care, you can do whatever you want to me type of thing, right? And
right. I mean, it's
most certainly that's part of how they're selling the show. I mean, it's both, really, right? Like it is characterizing her, but also, Masato promised fan service. They have to deliver sometimes. Right?
They do. I guess if Masato promised, then I guess we just have to.
Rey does eventually land a slap on him, though.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, but much later for like entirely different,
Yes, because her own. Yes, her own personal, space, her own body, whatever, is not important. But as they're heading back into Nerve, she asks the interesting question: "Do you trust your father?" to Shinji, and he's like, "Hell no."
It turns out that is what gets Rey angry.
That'll set her off. So that's how Shinji actually does get slapped.
How dare you badmouth Gendo?
How dare you badmouth that awful human being?
And like they intentionally do that right after he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," before, and she's like, "What? What are you talking about?" So anyway, they head back into Nerve for their next test. It's time for Rey to try to reactivate Unit 0 again, and this time with this time she's able to do it because I guess did she? I forget. Did she bring the glasses with her? Did they show that?
Yeah. Oh, I must have missed that.
She has them with her in the cockpit.
And so apparently that has provided her the emotional stability and sense of purpose needed for her to sync up with Unit 0. And she's able to activate it just in time, because episode 5 ends with the appearance of the fifth angel. And we kind of end the episode. Yeah. They decide not to sortie Unit 0 because she literally activated it, and then the alarms went off that the fifth angel is here. So they decide to shut that down and send out Unit 1. And
which I think unspoken. I think the unspoken thing there is that Gendo sees Shinji as more expendable than Rey.
Right. I was about to say that's not because they're worried about Rey. That's because send in Shinji. He can take a hit.
Right, and and he wants to protect Rey. Right. So, so they send out poor Shinji, and he immediately gets blasted.
Take a hit is exactly what he does.
The second the Unit 1 hits above ground, and that's kind of where we end the episode for episode 5. Right.
Yes, with fucking Ava Unit 1's fucking chest getting melted the fuck out of
by a laser beam.
Yeah.
But we should mention the fifth angel. So we're getting weirder and weirder and weirder here, right? Like the first angel we saw, which was like the third angel, looked kind of like a kaiju, but weird,
like a monster.
Weird Evangelion. It's a bipedal monster thing.
Yes.
The one after that, a little bit weirder, looked like a flatworm with.
Yeah, but still kind of vaguely kaiju-ish. But,
right. This is just literally like
a diamond, right? Like
right. Like it's.
I mean,
worth noting. This thing is a reference to basically another big floating diamond monster from some 80s mech show called Future Police Urachiman.
You know what? I totally believe that. So,
man, I don't know how that escaped the platinum notes there, but that's a good.
It's a neat deep cut, but I mean, this is kind of what I talked about, in the first podcast, right? Like, I think what Ava does really well is a lot of these trappings are still the same trappings of old kaiju mecha anime, but what Ava does well or does really well is introduce these very otherworldly enemies. You can't even put a face to most of these angels, right? There is no enemy to actually hate. It is more a natural phenomena than an actual opponent, at least for now, anyways.
Yeah.
And before we move on to the next episode, though, there's actually one little thing I want to bring up.
Sure.
I just want to shout it out real quick, and I'm not gonna go spend too long on it because this is an old ass take, but yo, fucking Evangelion's UI design is fucking god tier.
Yes.
Wow, like
What pattern
holy shit.
blue?
Like I'm talking about like all the like fucking like UI displays on the TV screens, you know, the stuff filling up, that absolute boundary shit, you know, the like, you know, in the Nerve headquarters when they got like the like weird multi-layered like holographic geographic display of like the terrain or whatever, like fucking Nerve fucking must have Nerve's like number one like budget priority must have been the Ava units, and their number two
Design team.
budget priority must have been the graphic design team or like the UI UX team because holy shit, those are some good ass looking screens, man. Like
as someone with a background in graphic design, let me say that is actually the hottest anime babe in Neon Genesis Evangelion is the UI.
is the Maki computer?
Yeah, yeah, right. Yes, the
hot dog. Yeah, it's Gaspar, Balthazar, Melchior.
But yeah, I mean, it also because they use those elements to kind of tell you what's going on and making them so cool to look at. Really, you know, makes it so it keeps it from being kind of just dry and boring looking at like, you know, a number or something.
Totally.
Right?
I mean, I think because I think that's a thing, right? Like Evangelion, even like the startup sequence is a thing every mecha anime has done, right? Where like the commander guy says, all right, launch the robot, and then you have like the bridge bunnies and the tech crew be like, all right, blah blah blah, like turning on the reactor and et cetera, right? But like what Eva does is like take even the very minor aspects of that, like just like, you know, the techno babble and shit, and then like elevates it to the next level with like just this stellar visual presentation.
Yeah, I mean they're making numbers iconic, like the 5-minute timer when the plug goes out. Everybody knows what that is, or the sound only thing that we talked about, you know, and we'll see later.
Right.
You just see, and all those are words and numbers, right? But like you instantly recognize them and know what they are, right?
Like I gotta say, Jel, if you're listening to that fucking Platinum Collection thing, I hope somewhere in one of those episodes they bring on fucking whoever did the UI design for Evangelion, because I'd be very curious to
keep an eye out.
Yeah, to hear what they have to say.
But yeah, so kind of no gap in between episode 5 and 6. We pick right back up. And you know, episode 6. This is it is a 2-parter because this is Ray 2. And then the Japanese title being Decisive Battle in Tokyo 3. I did want to mention from the notes, and I think we all immediately recognize this. Anno loves using captions to get that war documentary feel. we saw some of that in I think the first episode they do it, right? And then they do it throughout, I think, a little bit here and there.
They're all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, like, they kind of, you know...
Go ahead, G.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, yeah, like even like Gunbuster kind of did that a little bit too, right? Like, like big text on screen, you know.
Buster, you know, like ultra man-made, you know,
whatever
black
the
hole
title
black
for
hole
it is.
weapon, Buster Machine number 3.
Yeah.
Weird, almost like they're directed by the same person.
Yes, they specifically mentioned that in the platinum notes that Anno loves doing this, and this is the first time he pulled them back out since, you know, Aim for the Top or Gunbuster. So yeah, go figure, same guy, right? But yeah, we do get a lot of that in this episode specifically, though. And so we pick up right where we left off. Shinji basically dies. they bring him back. Like his heart stops.
Oh man, that's so. I can't help it. Like, there's something very funny to me about just like it's the most sensible thing to do, but like just there was something very funny about like the idea of like Shinji and the Ava Unit 1 fucking deploying to fight this angel, getting blasted the second he sticks his head out, and then just the elevator lowering him down again.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, whoops! We totally fucked up.
It's both serious and there is kind of a certain layer of comedy to it, right? Like it's so absurd that, you know, the timing of it and everything is just so ridiculous. But
yeah, I think that's really what does it.
So Shinji basically gets, you know, they get his heart going again, but he's obviously unconscious, so he's down for the count at the moment.
Apparently,
And
LCL fluid can do fucking anything.
yeah,
Yep.
So that's what it's for, right?
It's
So
basically magic.
yeah. So while Shinji's down, they start doing a little bit of a recon on the angel.
Oh, this
They
is
determined
great.
that-
I love this scene.
So Misato pulls out all kinds of tricks, including my personal favorite, the 1/1 scale dummy of Unit 1 that she puts out to just get blasted.
Right, like to just test the range of the angel and stuff. I really love it because it's a really fucking like dumbass cheap trick, but also like it makes complete sense in the context of the situation they're in.
Right. I mean, we're talking about the angels kind of being almost like a natural force more than like a sentient enemy, or at least that's what it seems right now.
Yeah.
So the idea of like it will just literally shoot anything that gets in. It's not gonna make the determination whether this is actually Unit 1 or not. It's just gonna and I think they do that. They shoot. You got to shoot some missiles at it to try, right? And that obviously doesn't work.
I just did like that short montage of those just being like, well, until we get Shinji to wake up, let's just throw some fucking tricks at it and see what happens.
Yeah,
it felt very like weirdly like, I don't know, a DIY is not the right word, but I guess specifically the use of balloons just kind of reminded me of like the kind of like fun, like, Nerve is this like fucking multi-billion-dollar like organization. I mean, they built a fucking giant robot. They built 2 giant robots, like. But like it kind of reminds me of like how like in World War II, right? Like the Americans would use like balloon inflated like truck models. Like they would have they would have balloons that were inflated to look like trucks.
Yeah.
Like trucks and planes, so that like German scout like planes like looking from below would think, oh shit, like they got a whole division of tanks down there,
I'm sure that's where the inspiration for this is coming from.
Just like those kind of like weird low tech solutions.
So with as silly as it may look, Misato does actually successfully determine the range of the weapons, and they also determine that this thing also has a drill on the bottom, and it is planning to drill through the geofront. And
notably, the drill is moving the wrong direction the entire episode.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah,
I did not even notice that.
And it will be, I forget,
it's screwing upward.
I forget how many hours they have, but they only have a few hours before it will break through the geofront and attack them. So
it's like 10 hours or something.
Yeah, right? Less, like half a day, basically, right? So they have very little time to put together a countermeasure. But Misato has a plan.
Hell yes.
It may only have an 8.7% success chance after running the
honestly like
calculation.
But that, considering that the activation rate for Unit 1 was 9 zeros,
yes,
after the decimal, pretty good chance.
I mean, look, I'm gonna say like in the genre where 1% might as well be 100%. Like 8.7% might as well be 8,000%. So like they're in a really good place as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, when I play Grand Blue Fantasy, I only have a 6% chance of rolling an SSR, and I have dozens of SSRs, right? So it's
fuck off.
Fucking 6% bullshit. It's like
so.
Let's not.
So I mean, hey, 8.7% is a pretty good chance, but the plan is they're gonna get a big ass gun and shoot it in just the right spot.
Yeah.
Specifically,
what a great plan.
Specifically, there's a experimental positron rifle thing that Misato is going to requisition and turn into a giant sniper rifle that they can fire outside of the effective range of the angel, now that they've determined the range. And if they can pinpoint that shot right in the right spot, it'll go right through the AT field and kill it, right? Sounds like a great plan.
Sounds good.
So we kind of get
they have to power it, right?
Yes, we kind of get the great montage of them like assembling the parts, and then there's the question of well, how much we need, X amount of energy to pierce this thing, and where are we going to get all the power from? And Masato's answer is, we're just going to use all of Japan.
Hell
it's
yes.
one of the,
as you do.
This whole episode is one of the coolest episodes, I think, of the series, and I feel like just it feels very Gainax, and if you've watched enough Gainax, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
but that's the kind of that's the kind of ridiculous idea that they have, not only will think of, but have the audacity to try of well, let's make this giant cable that takes all the power from Japan and put it into a gun.
Yeah, I really loved this episode in general, but I really loved this specific scene. The titular Operation Yashima. This like just like this idea of like just we're just gonna take all the power from every town, every city in Japan, and we're gonna hook it up to this gun to shoot the fuck out of this monster. And I think in a lot of ways, like what this does, and like to kind of like tie this to like older mecha anime, is like at its core, like this scene, like the whole crew getting together to let the robot do the one cool thing it needs to do to save the day. It kind of ties into like the classic mecha trope of like, I guess the way I would put it is like, it takes a village to raise a giant robot.
Right.
It is of course a singular figure piloted like usually by a singular individual, but like it is always multiple people running back and forth. Whether it's the stern captain at the ship, or like the bridge bunnies typing out the techno babble, or like the gruff tech guy down by the hangar saying we'll get it done in time, I guarantee it, or blah blah blah, the generator's running all green, all that stuff. Like all that stuff that is like just technical detail and just like fun like montage stuff, and like a lot of mecha anime have done that stuff. But the thing I love about Evangelion, and especially the thing it does here, right, is like it's like you said, Jill, it just audaciously takes it to the next scale. Like it's no longer just like, oh, some dudes in the hangar and some people on the bridge like typing stuff out. No, it's like we're going to mobilize the entire country.
Right.
And like you don't need to see every single scene, you don't need to see every single like negotiation, but like you can feel like this feeling of like just like, oh shit, like the government said we gotta like hook these cables up to our local town generator, and we gotta lead the cable all the way onto the freeway next to the fucking hundreds of other powered cables that are on the freeway, all leading to Tokyo 3. And it just really does this great job of evoking the sense of like, this is a massive undertaking, and it takes like so many people to just create the situation that lets the robot do the cool thing.
Yeah. And I feel like when I say this feels very Gainax, like nobody does that sense of scale better than them, right? Like whether it's here or like in their works after.
Yeah.
We mentioned Gunbuster previous, but later on when we see like stuff and how things escalate in like Diebuster or Gurren Lagann being the biggest of all escalations, that sense of scale, and like you just don't get that. Nobody else does that quite the way they do.
I mean, and I think it's like, and I think it's like a thing of like Gainax, like that sensibility is like, it always feels like they earned their scale, if that makes sense. Like there are other shows, there are other mecha shows that go, as big a scale, but like, to fucking, bring up like, for example, fucking, was it 2018? Was it 2017? Fucking, I don't care anymore. To bring up fucking Darling in the Franxx, right? Like that's another mecha anime that kind of went to the same scale, right? Of like, oh, these like planet-sized robots, but like it never feels earned, right? It never feels like they earned the right to get a robot that big. Like, it does not feel like the human cost was there. Like, I think the thing that Evangelion does really well with, Gainax as a whole, but I think specifically here with this episode, is like, and when I say human cost, I don't mean like human lives are sacrificed. I mean, it took thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in Japan, like coordinating to allow Unit 1 to do this one fucking amazingly badass thing it does. Like, it feels like Gainax always understands that the human cost is necessary to help us understand, like, why that scale is important.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, it's not the same.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Iro.
Just saying, like, one of the towns in the montage of, like, we're shutting off all the power is just Anno's hometown.
Oh, yeah? That's a good detail.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, this would not have been nearly as cool if it was just like, oh, well, let's get our big sniper rifle, and if we can make the shot, we'll, the fact that it's the journey they have to go through to come up with this crazy plan and execute it, and seeing it executed, that really makes it feel like they earn it, right? But
exactly.
So yeah, they get their gun together, they get the plan together, and Masato dubs this, Operation Yashima, which I'll read the Platinum Collection notes here. It mentions the. If we're curious what Operation Yashima is, it mentions the name Operation Yashima is a reference to when Yoichi Nasuno shoots
Yoichi
shoots a fan with his bow from atop his horse on the beach in the battle of Yashima in the first year of Bunji, or year 1185.
Okay.
And I like how they throw in here, that's Chief of Operations Katsuragi for you. Quite the intellectual. Also, Yashima, written differently, is also the old name for Japan, and thus referencing the fact that they're using all of Japan to power the gun.
Sure.
So,
all right.
Clever name, Masato.
Yeah.
We talked about we were talking about her, the contrast here, G, of her being a slob, seemingly being a useless slob at home, but then when it's time to get the job done, she gets the job done.
She's coordinating a lot of shit.
Yeah, no, like, I think it's cool that, like Gendo is, like, not really in this episode at all. Like, despite him being, like, ostensibly the head honcho leader, like, he just shows up to, like, approve Misato's plan, and then Misato's the one running the show this entire episode. Right. I think it's a neat and notable detail.
Gendo doesn't. It's just like I can sympathize as the plight of the middle manager here. The people at the top usually don't do much; they just make the decisions, and it's the middle management that's actually working out the logistics and getting stuff done. And that's
it takes the Yang Wen-Lees of the world.
Also, in reference to Operation Yashima, several years ago, when there was the big Fukushima disaster, and rolling blackouts were required across the area, people started calling it Operation Yashima.
Sure.
Oh, when the actual
I guess it kind of speaks to how
their power conservation plan for Japan was unofficially dubbed Operation Yashima.
I guess it kind of speaks to how culturally ingrained this episode is, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, Evangelion's such a huge deal over there, right?
Right. But I mean, even specifically the phrasing Operation Yashima, like that very much speaks to because sure, anybody can say Rei or Shinji or Unit 1, but if you're specifically referencing
episode 6,
episode 6 of a TV show that aired 20 years ago,
had I not just watched this last week, I would not have remembered what Operation Yashima was. But yeah, so everything's in place, and I like, speaking of the UI here, G, I liked to show Shinji waked up. They show the monitors or whatever on his whatever, how alive he is, if you will, and as soon as it
HP
creeps,
and MP,
yes, as soon as it creeps slightly above conscious, they're like, get Shinji up.
All right, wake him up.
Yeah.
Hey man, look, they don't got a lot of time to sit around,
And
Yeah.
So he wakes back up in the hospital again, kind of the same lighting as before, too. I thought that was interesting. But also interesting, I thought they chose to send Ray to get him. I'm wondering if they are catching on that that's the best way to keep him on the hook or whatever. But
yeah, I mean, I think Nerve is resourceful. First, they tried with Misato, and despite her womanly charms, it wasn't really working. And they realized, oh, actually, we know what Shinji's taste is. Let's throw the girl at him. So,
right. So
Sure.
they send Ray.
I mean, in fairness, everyone else is also busy.
Fair enough.
True
It's
enough.
It's not like Masato can just like leave the the command center to go wake Shinji up or whatever. But so Rei and Shinji get ready to suit up for the operation. Kind of bringing, I guess, everything full circle for Rei's introductory arc here. Shinji does ask her, why are you agreeing to to do this? Why are you piloting the Evangelion? Because that's obviously a question he's trying to figure out himself. And she says something to the effect of, she does it because she's bound to all people, but ultimately that she has nothing else. Which setting up her dramatic moment at the end of the episode. But just, I guess, something to bring that thematic arc full circle with what we learning who Rei is, and kind of, I guess, contrasting that with Shinji, who's still trying to figure out what in the world he's doing here. But so yeah, then it's time to shoot the thing with a big gun.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Sounds good.
The plan's drawn up. They're gonna, I think, what is it, like at midnight, they're gonna carry out the operation. Unit 1's gonna be the gunner. I hate to be that guy. I do have to wonder why they actually need the trigger to be physically pulled by a giant robot, but nevertheless, it looks very cool, so who cares?
Because it's cooler.
Prototype,
So he, and I love the shots they show now that the gun's assembled of just how big it is.
Yeah.
The gun is so big. And
I love that.
Unit 1 has to fire it prone like a sniper, right? And
yes.
And
I do like before this. There's a bit of the classmates having not gone to the shelter, hanging out at the top of the school so they can cheer Shinji on.
Yeah, so they actually get the seat. They actually catch a glimpse of the Evangelions launching, right? And Rei's role in Unit 0 is to play defense, and so they just find a big blast shield from a spaceship or something.
Yes, I love this part.
Pulled the heat shielding off of a space shuttle,
right?
Made of shield,
treated for cosmic radiation, and it's like, I love that because it very much kind of ties into this idea of no, we don't have time to fucking build you a shield. Here, hold this up and make sure Shinji doesn't get melted while he shoots. Yeah,
it's really cool and just plays up to the whole we got to make do with what we got here in the time that we have.
Yes.
So this is the biggest, hardest shield we can get in 8 hours. So Rei,
exactly.
Rei, you're gonna hold this thing up, and so the operation goes down. For the extra drama, Shinji misses the first shot, or actually, it's not even that he misses. But the angel counterfires, and we get some Dragon Ball Z fireball things flying all over the place.
Yeah, I think it was even cooler than that. It's the
energy is so much that the warp space or something.
Right, they kind of
they warp around each other,
they deflect each other. Or something,
it's super neat.
And so, and he's got I love it's like a bolt action reload on this.
Yes. Yeah, it's got to reload the fuse on the rifle. It's
100-foot long fuse that's got to get popped out.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah,
this sequence is very wave motion gun from Space Battleship Yamato.
Yeah, totally.
Extremely the long charge up sequence and everything.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
you see the kind of bar fill up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean it's kind of like that's kind of thing, right? That's what I love, right? Is in Space Battleship Yamato, right? firing the wave motion gun was like that's a solid chunk of that episode sometimes, right? It's like, oh, like, the pilot's got to be out there to defend the Yamato, and the bridge crew gotta get the calculations right, and like the guys down in the engine room got to make sure, like, it can power up and all that shit, and like.
And you get like 3 different things going kunk 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 before it fires.
Totally. And it's like it's kind of the same thing of like, it is this big group effort, and I think that's kind of what I love about this in the end is like, yeah, Shinji's the one who pulls the trigger, but like it took half a day and the whole country to pull this off.
Right. And even Ray needs to jump in for further dramatic flair as the angel can reload faster than he can. So she has to jump in and block the shot while the gun locks back on again. But of course, he makes the shot. And then again, bringing it full circle, we get the parallel shot of Shinji rushing to open up the capsule to pull Ray out, much like his father did. Kind of, they make very specific
shot mirror,
they make very specific directorial choices there to mirror the shots, and he gives the whole don't ever say you have nothing, whatever speech, and actually gets her to smile, sort of. It's a little weird, but yeah. And that's that does it for episode 6 and kind of the introductory arc for Ray, and for the episodes we're going to talk about. I did want to mention, because I don't think we've mentioned it yet, and the Platinum Notes chose to bring this up here as well. The ending song, which is "Fly Me to the Moon," which is not obviously an original song for the series. That's a kind of a classic old standard song, probably most famously sung by Frank Sinatra. But by other singers as well, like the ending of Bayonetta, for example. So they actually do end up rotating the singers for it, kind of based on some of the arcs. So since this was Ray's arc, Ray's voice actress Megumi Hayashibara sings the "Fly Me to the Moon" for these episodes, and they'll do that throughout the. As a fun fact, they'll do that throughout the series for different arcs depending on what's going on. So
yeah. Speaking of the moon, like there's a lot of shots this episode that like conflate Ray with the moon or connect the two symbolically.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I hadn't really thought about that.
Standing in front of it all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, I just figured that's like that's just like good like shot framing, but
right.
That
I mean, like
sense.
there's some. I mean, spoilers for upcoming episodes, but like there's some stuff with Asuka and the sun also.
Sure, I mean that one has blue hair and one has red hair.
I think.
Yeah. I think we know who Asuka is.
Yeah, I think. I think in 2019 is possible. I think in 2019 is impossible to not know who Asuka is and like anime. So I don't think. Spoiler, but yeah, and I very much episode 6 kind of kicks off one of my favorite stretches of the series over the next couple episodes. So I am really looking forward to the next block. So we'll be we'll be checking it out on the next episode. So all right. You guys have any final thoughts? G, do you want to update your thesis at all? Anything you want to
add? No, not particularly. I think for the most part, my thesis is holding up pretty well so far. Like, at its core, like Evangelion, at least here in these early stages, in these first 6 episodes, is at its core, it is a mecha anime. It is doing the things mecha anime does. I've kind of brought up like relevant like examples of stuff that Evangelion is likely drawing from, and but I think like that is not to take away from the things it does legitimately very well, which is very like its pacing and its visual presentation and the scale of like its execution, and in general, just the its ability to pull off everything it's tried to do so far. I the way I come down on it is like, if Evangelion really was just 26 episodes of episode 4, then like,
right.
I would have some more concerns.
What I was gonna say, an addendum to that, is like,
Yeah.
I'm interested to get into the like middle section of the show, because I feel like a lot of Ava's reputation is built on the very start and very end.
Yes,
when there is like 12 episodes of kind of just normal stuff in the center.
Sure. I mean, I think it probably speaks to like what I've absorbed through cultural osmosis. Like, I'm basically familiar with like the first 6 and like the last like 3 or 4 episodes of Evangelion, but like the middle is actually for me also maybe the most exciting, because it is actually the stuff I know the least about.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Just because like nobody talks about it, which kind of has me excited.
Gee, you did see the movies,
Sorry, go
right?
ahead.
You did see the movies, right?
The first one. I've watched Rebuild 1. Okay. I never got around to Rebuild 2, but
because I think,
and the way Rebuild 3 went, I'm not sure I want to watch the Rebuild movies anymore. But
yeah, I haven't watched them before. I understand at this point the movies are going to start wildly diverging from.
Dude, if you
that's certainly what I've heard.
Yes,
that divergence starts like at the start of 2, basically.
Okay,
so, like a major divergence.
I thought it made it up to like the Fifth Angel thing for some reason, but maybe I didn't watch them. So.
I will say,
Rebuild 1 does end with around the same place as episode 6 of the TV show.
I know we're not going to get into Rebuild much during these podcasts, but I will say the fun part about the divergence is when Shinji's listening to his SDAT, and it goes, because normally in the show it's always swapping between like 25, 26 or whatever, but right before everything gets off the rails it switches to 27, and he's like, what's going on? That's weird.
When it starts changing to the alternate dimension Evangelion. That's pretty funny. All right, Ira, did you have any general thoughts on how you're feeling so far on the rewatch?
I think we covered most of it. I'm enjoying it. I'm noticing things I probably wouldn't have noticed before.
Yeah, and I'm remembering things like a lot of the cool stuff that happens in episode 6, like some of the details, for example, that like I remember generally what happened, but like
so
like, oh yeah, so that was. They used that big dumb balloon thing, and like so that's
right. So I think I just have better media literacy now than I did when I first watched the show, if that makes sense. Like, I'm noticing more subtle things that are being done.
Right. We've sharpened our critical eyes more probably, and since the last time we watched it, but yeah. And again, I mean, just I feel like. With Shinji in particular, I feel like my opinion has softened and changed a lot since the last time I watched it too. I just feel more bad for him now than I did the first time going through, especially like, and just like watching through episode 4, just much more sympathetic, because I do remember watching that and being kind of like annoyed and frustrated with him, and then I don't really feel that way now. So I think that's kind of carrying over still, and I'm sure will as we get into those types of when we cover those areas of the story. But all right, well, we kept a relatively decent time this time, I guess.
Yeah, it's about it. I'd say this about this. I'd say, as somebody who does a podcast, recapping a TV show, an OVA, 3 episodes a piece, I'd say an hour 30 is not a bad time to shoot for.
You could you could queue up
watch the episode. That's fine.
Queue up episode 4, have that on a one screen, and then put us on in your other ear, and we'll accompany you on the watch while you're watching.
Oh dear.
All right, so that'll do it for this episode. Then let's just do our housekeeping. You can read all of our content on the Glorio blog at theglorioblog.com. You can follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog. You can check out all of our podcasts, including the Glorio Chat, where we talk about current anime and now, I guess, anime news. I guess we do that now. And also check out G and Iro, their podcast, The Legend of the Glorio Heroes, where they talk about I never have the tagline. They talk about Legend of the Galactic Heroes. It's a good show. Go check that out.
We do.
You can, so check out the podcast on most podcast places, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. We're also on Podbean, and we post the videos for them on YouTube. You can like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your enemies. And I think there's one more thing we have to do here. Next time on Neon Genesis EvanGLORIO, we'll talk about Episode 7, A Human Work. Episode 8, Asuka Strikes or Asuka Arrives in Japan. Episode 9, Both of You Dance Like You Want to Win or Moment and Heart Together. And maybe we'll give you a little fan service. See you next time!